Good evening, I'm Ces Orenia Drilon.
And I'm Pauline Verzosa.
The big stories tonight. The ICI and DOJ have set their own timelines to finally prosecute personalities in the flood control scandal. The independent commission is looking at filing 15 to 20 cases within a month. The Justice Department will do it sooner, suing the so-called king and queen of contractors, Curly and Sara Diskaya, next week.
And down south, there is still no relief from tremors and aftershocks as already affected areas try to recover. Just today, a magnitude 5.8 aftershock jolted northern Cebu, while Davao Oriental is shocked by the massive aftermath of last Friday's twin quakes.
And the 6.793 trillion peso national budget has passed the House of Representatives, but some lawmakers believe the proposed spending fund for 2026 is not corruption-proof, with pork barrel and unprogrammed appropriations all over it.
The timelines is already set. The people are impatient.
Hindi po kailangan na hintayin hanggang sila po ay handang magbigay ng kanilang salaysay o yung sinasabi ng kanilang abogado na they will tell all.
We will file the appropriate cases with or without the state witnesses. We will only file strong cases.
15 to 20 cases. That's a target referral complaints the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, or ICI, will bring before the Office of the Ombudsman in 4 weeks. That's, of course, over anomalous and ghost flood control projects that the Fact-Finding Commission had unraveled so far. According to ICI's newly sworn special advisor, former PNP Chief Rodolfo Azurin Jr., they are currently validating 421 suspected ghost projects. By next week, the commission will be ready for case build-up. After that, it's off to the Ombudsman Boying Remulla's office. The Justice Department is ready to sue as well. The agency is looking at filing cases against husband and wife Curly and Sara Diskaya by next week. The DOJ, however, did not disclose yet specific complaints that will be lodged against the contractor couple. The Diskayas are currently applying to be state witnesses. According to State Prosecutor General Richard Fadulion, the evaluation of the Diskayas is ongoing. They are also yet to turn in their promised tell-all affidavit.
Hindi po kailangan na hintayin hanggang sila po ay handang magbigay ng kanilang salaysay o yung sinasabi ng kanilang abogado na they will tell all. Malalaman lang po natin yan kapag nandiyan na po sa harap ng nag-iimbestiga at i-evaluate din po natin, titingnan natin kung ito po ay sapat na, no, para sila ay may konsiderang state witness.
Sara and Curly Diskaya have declined to comment on the DOJ's plan. Earlier today, Mr. Diskaya appeared at the Pasay Regional Trial Court in connection with the habeas corpus petition he and his wife, Sara, filed. That's for their release from Senate custody. The husband and wife team were cited in contempt last month after giving inconsistent statements to the Blue Ribbon Committee. The Pasay RTC has given the Diskayas until Wednesday to submit a memoranda before it issues a resolution. The DOJ is still in talks with the Ombudsman, the ICI, even the PNP and NBI regarding their respective investigations on the matter.
The timelines is already set. The people are impatient. If we don't find something satisfactory, we will file the appropriate cases with or without the state witnesses. We will build the cases based on the evidence we have. But what we can assure the Filipino people is that we will only file strong cases.
Now moving on to another story, the national government has poured some 158 million pesos in cash aid to stricken municipalities from last Friday's 7.4 magnitude tremor in Davao Oriental. President Bongbong Marcos visited the region today, which had a total of 166,000 families affected by the quake. 500 homes were also destroyed and 3 lives were lost. Aside from the immediate relief of food packs and cash assistance provided by the DSWD, the Office of the President released millions in funds to the Davao Oriental provincial government and its 11 towns. Each amount was based on the assessed needs of the LGU.
The reason na binibigay namin itong pondo sa inyo, Dahil as a former governor, I know that lahat ng bawat lugar may kaibahan sa pangangailangan. Yung iba, kailangan ayusin yung water supply. Yung iba, kailangan buksan yung kalsada. Iba-iba.
President Marcos also visited some severely affected structures, including the Manay District Hospital and Manay National High School. He also visited affected residents now living in tents.
We have the tent cities, but we will change the tent cities into the modular shelters that we have found to be mas matibay, mas komportable.
Meanwhile, the Department of Interior and Local Government has ordered immediate structural inspections in earthquake-hit areas in Cebu and Mindanao. LGUs were instructed to inspect public and residential structures to determine the extent of damage and ensure the safety of occupants. Aftershocks, however, continue to be felt in both Davao and Cebu. Early this morning, a magnitude 5.8 aftershock struck Bogo City again, 2 weeks since the magnitude 6.9 tremor hit the area. No damage to structures was reported from this earthquake. However, 14 people were injured.
And we now bring in our first guest tonight. Welcome to the big story, Department of Science and Technology Secretary Renato Solidum Jr. Good evening, Secretary. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, sis.
First of all, Secretary, I'd like to talk to you about the unique tectonic setting of the Philippines that we've been, hit by successive quakes. In Bogo, for instance, it's a newly discovered fault. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, essentially, the newly discovered fault was named Bogo Fault. But in reality, if you look at the motion of islands in the Philippines, Bohol and northern Mindanao is moving north. Negros Island is moving southeast, and the Philippine Sea is pushing Samar and Leyte towards the west. So essentially, Bohol and Negros and Cebu are actually being pushed together, and so the stresses on Cebu has been accumulating. In 2012, there was a magnitude 6.9 earthquake in Negros, 7.2 the following year in Bohol, and in 2017, magnitude 6.5 in Leyte. So the faults identified previously in Cebu, just like Bogo Bay Fault, has not moved since the Spanish time. So it happened that it is now the time essentially where stress has built up that it has to be released through the movement of the fault, the Bogo Bay Fault.
And that 5.8 magnitude aftershock is almost, would that be considered an aftershock, or is that another earthquake?
Aftershocks are considered events that are triggered by the main shock, which was 6.9. And typically, these are of magnitude 1 unit in order. So we were expecting a magnitude 5.9 aftershock out of the Cebu earthquake, which was 6.9.
And so now we come to the Davao Oriental and twin quakes, not related at all to the what's happening in Cebu, Bohol, and Negros. You're saying that's the area where the faults are located. Walang connection.
Yes, essentially, there's no connection. The earthquakes in Davao Oriental were due to movement or subduction of rocks along the Philippine Trends. And the motion of the earthquake in Davao Oriental was not one single motion, but two big motions. Essentially, in normal earthquake, the rupture of the rocks would be one continuous rupture, but in this sense, in this case, the rupture happened twice from the same fault or trends. And so we call it a doublet because it cannot be called an aftershock. It was very close to the magnitude, which was 7.4. What happened was 6.8. So we call it doublet. In essence, some faults move in several segments or several cycles and not continuous. And it happened in 1992. The same doublet also happened offshore of Manay in Davao Oriental.
Is that rare? Twin quakes? Is that a rare occurrence?
Oh, well, it's not common. Yeah, it's rare, but essentially this is caused by asperity or blockage as the fault will move. No, if a sliver of a big rock is lodged in between the fault, then the motion will not be continuous. Or if the fault bends, then the motion does not really continue throughout the whole length of the rupture, but sometimes it would stop for a while.
Secretary, well, the Philippines reportedly has about 180 active fault segments and 6 active trenches. But just for the public's understanding, how do we differentiate earthquake generators, like trenches, from faults?
Okay. Faults are typically breaks on the ground, on land or offshore, and would have depth of around 40 kilometers. Trenches, on the other hand, are where the big blocks of rocks or tectonic plates would tend to move down beneath and subside beneath the Philippine archipelago. And the earthquakes caused by movement along these trenches would range from sometimes near 1 kilometer down to sometimes 200 to 400 kilometers.
The earthquake in Bogo was shallow, so which caused.
Correct.
And then how would we differentiate what happened in Bogo from the one from the twin quake in Davao Oriental, the movement? Sir.
Okay, yes. Well, essentially, if you look at the damage caused by the Cebu earthquake and the doublet in Davao Oriental, the Cebu earthquake was more damaging despite the fact that it was of magnitude 6.9, but the energy of the quake was felt at the surface simply because the depth of the quake was so shallow at 5 kilometers, and the epicenter was near the land. On the other hand, the Davao Oriental earthquakes were offshore, and the depth was more than 20 kilometers. So essentially, the energy which traveled from the sea to Davao Oriental was much absorbed by the rocks and quite diminished, so the intensity was not that damaging.
Well, Secretary, I understand the PHIVOLCS does record at least 30 earthquakes every day, and that's normal. But I think what's alarming a lot of people is that the intensity is much higher now. You're feeling it also in different parts of the country, from Zambales to La Union, Cebu, and now Davao. But is this all part of a normal seismic activity, or are you noticing a pattern that could lead to a bigger earthquake?
Okay. Since the faults are not directly related at all, and the occurrence of one earthquake or the movement of one fault did not trigger the others, therefore there is no pattern. It is just a coincidence where sometimes, as we have around 30 earthquakes on the average per day occurring, that there are occasions when the movement will be quite big, that we can feel very strong earthquakes in succession. So it's just normal.
Okay. Now, this has heightened the awareness here in the metropolis as we are now bracing for the so-called big one. Are we well prepared for that?
Well, we have been prepared better now than before, but in terms of impact of such a large earthquake, we still see a lot of improvement on the quality of infrastructure and houses that we have. As our latest studies still indicate a significant number of casualty of around 30,000 in Metro Manila alone, and additionally, if we consider the potential casualties in provinces surrounding Metro Manila, it can total up to 50,000. And that number of casualties due to the fact that we have many non-engineered houses or even old houses, such that these need to be strengthened, or even some of the mass housing units should be declared unhabitable.
Secretary, under the National Building Code, I believe buildings should be able to withstand at least intensity 8. Pero ang nangyari po sa Cebu, and is that correct, Secretary?
That's correct. That's really correct. That's why in most cases, compared to other countries, our casualty is much lower because we have that building code. Unfortunately, if we have houses that are not built, supervised by engineers, we call those non-engineered buildings, or sometimes the materials used are not standard, then we can see the effect of strong earthquake. We can see damage damaged houses and buildings.
So does that indicate, Secretary, na nagkukulang po talaga tayo when it comes to inspecting risk assessments? Because in Cebu, the intensity was 7. In Davao, it was intensity 6. And yet, you had lots of buildings collapsing. At if the big one does happen here in Metro Manila, it's projected to be at magnitude 7.2. And the intensity will most likely be destructive.
Yes, intensity 8. So, in essence, most of the major earthquakes have intensities 8. So we did not expect significant damage in Cebu, for example, if they really follow the code. So a big problem in the country would be a significant number of our houses are non-engineered. They were constructed by masons alone or carpenters and did not have the benefit of being supervised by engineers. And
So
for
that
example,
is
if
what
people
our...
don't
Go ahead, Secretary.
if people don't apply for building permit, then they're not inspected. They just build. So that's really the problem. We don't really inspect buildings and prevent construction if they don't have any application.
So is that the reason why the projected casualty count is so high for the metropolis?
The Metro Manila, yes, correct. So we have a significant number of non-engineered buildings in Metro Manila. These are typically the informal settlements. And I've been saying that we need to focus on the reconstruction of houses so that people would be safer during major earthquake events.
So the responsibility should fall on the local government units, the cities, to do
Yes, correct. Both local and, of course, supported by the national agency. But it all depends also on people. Sometimes they don't follow the building code, when in fact it's much cheaper to just follow the building code than have poorly built houses and later on lives are lost or their houses and assets are destroyed.
Do you have a figure? Do you have an estimate of how many % of the dwellings are non-engineered?
Well, essentially, if you look at potential damage to low-rise buildings from 1 to 10 stories, it's around 13% heavily damaged or collapsed. Mid-rise buildings are almost 10%. And just like public buildings like schools and others are also of the same percentage, 10%. So based on those figures, it's still significant such that we need to make sure that buildings are evaluated and inspected. For example, there is ongoing retrofitting of hospitals and schools in Metro Manila. And this is a continuing effort of the government.
Pero Secretary, bakit po nangyayari yun? You mentioned earlier some people don't apply for building permits and that's quite dangerous. May nangyayari rin po bang korupsyon sa ganyan para dayain, matayo na agad yung building, the structures?
Well, ang practice kasi lalo na sa local government and in provinces, people just construct before. No, before the buildings were just starting, especially the low-rise buildings. And so, because of the need for having housing, then typically local government won't bother preventing people to build these structures.
Plus, well, there's a significant number of informal settlers. So sila po ang matatamaan dito.
Informal settlers, and of course, we need to look at buildings that follow the building code before, but now constructed before 1992. Buildings constructed before 1992 had somewhat a rigid design that it breaks easier. After 1992, the buildings are now more flexible.
Okay.
So Secretary, given all these developments, how is our government shifting to a more proactive approach? Kasi lagi natin naririnig, di ba, na we're just reacting, focusing on how to respond to disasters, which is good. But I think an emphasis should be placed on proactive measures. Are we ready in case a large-scale earthquake actually hits major parts of the country?
Well, based on the casualty estimate, we're not that ready. But the government has been preparing for how to have an effective and efficient response in Metro Manila, where we have assigned local government units and units of the armed forces to respond to specific local government units in Metro Manila. But the real challenge is really at the local level on how to convince residential owners to have their buildings evaluated and retrofitted if necessary.
All right.
We need to give more incentives so that they can really strengthen their houses.
Also, Secretary, the DOST has a hazard map, and so there should also be no structures erected in hazardous areas. Do you find that there's more use of this map that that everybody should be checking?
Yes, definitely. Based on my experience when I was still at PVOX, there are a lot of people asking for assessments as to the presence of faults. And with the availability of information through apps like Hazard Hunter, then both the local government and the potential owners or buyers of land would have the ability to find out if there are indeed such hazards.
Secretary, I know the DOST introduced an app that is available for us to check structures, the integrity. How updated is this app? And I also wanted to ask Secretary, do we still have enough scientists, investors in this field, or are we losing them already internationally abroad for greener pastures?
Okay. Now, the particular app that you are mentioning would be the How Safe Is My House app.
How Safe Is My House?
How Safe Is My House app. It is composed of 12 questions that would pertain to the materials, the design, and the integrity of the house. So it's very simple. It will take just like 10 minutes. And you would find out if a 1 to 2 story concrete house would be resistant or resilient to a strong earthquake. As to the scientists needed, PVOX has just gotten an approval for the PVOX Modernization Act just recently, and so we need to have more scientists as more job is being required of us, and we need to cover as many spaces all over the country in terms of hazard assessment and guiding the local government units. Now, to remedy some of these constraints, we have been developing automated planning app so that local governments are guided in their preparedness for planning or for their recovery after a major disaster.
So, Secretary, moving on to another initiative, we'd like to congratulate you on the solar-powered passenger ferry. Iisa pa lang ba yan?
Yes.
Ilan na ba yun, Secretary?
Isa pa lang yon because we wanted to show a proof of concept that Filipinos can design an electric ferry, battery-operated and solar-powered. So we're now looking at potential investors or technology licenses so that they can manufacture it and then provide the service to MMDA or other possible private transport operators. Now, aside from the ferry, we have a lot of electric tricycles and jeepneys already. And together with the scientific community through UP, we developed the solar-enabled charging system as well. So we've been providing some incentives to potential tricycle driver owners of electric tricycles so that they can test first the use of these electric tricycles. And indeed, they're very happy because instead of buying gasoline, they're just charging it for free.
Any takers, any investors interested?
For the tricycles, there have been some companies already formed, but we need more investment. Actually, when I talk about this, we need more patriotism now from our business people so that we can create more jobs if we support our local electric vehicle industry.
Now, going back to your, is it the PVOX Modernization Act?
Yes.
So that's now in Congress.
It's already signed into law by the President.
Signed into law. Mas mataas bang sweldo ng mga scientists
Hindi
natin?
naman.
Ay, hindi?
Hindi naman, pareho lang.
Paano yan?
Well, in reality, if we talk about this job and if you work in government, helping the country is a very big incentive already. But the salary in the DOST is competitive anyway. It's not as bad as in other countries. We were competitive. It's not that you don't get rich, but you're okay.
Sana ganun ang iniisip ng lahat ng government officials, secretary.
Well, you know, when we work in government, it means that you're ready to provide public service.
Thank you. Thank you so much for talking to us. That was DOST Secretary Renato Solidum Jr. Sana lahat ganyan.
Sana all.
May psychic reward lang ang hinahanap.
Tama, for the love of the country. We're just going to take a quick break, but coming up, controversial Congressman Kiko Barzaga was late for his very own hearing with the Ethics Committee today. His reason? Late night gaming. This story and more when we return. Keep it here on One News.
I firmly believe, Madam Speaker, it's time to stop having unprogrammed appropriations in the national budget. Hindi lang dapat ito i-zero, kundi dapat ay no, wala na dapat unprogrammed funds sa General Appropriations Bill. Kung wala palang pera ay bakit magbabalak na gumasta? Naging pugad tuloy ito ng mga ghost, substandard, and overpriced projects. Nagiging kumbinyenteng parkingan.
Sa 2026 budget, tuloy pa rin ang ligaya dahil meron pa rin unprogrammed appropriations. Imbis na matuto tayo sa mga ghost projects sa nakaraan, hindi pa rin natutuldukan ang korupsyon.
Nasayang at sinayang ang pagkakataon na ibalik ang tiwala ng taong bayan. Trust remains a big word for all of us.
House Majority Leader Sandro Marcos, however, gave his assurance to pass the resolution that seeks to open the BICAM deliberations to the public.
Current status of the joint resolution that was filed by the Honorable De Lima is currently pending at the Committee on Rules. Once the House has more time, we will be able to address the said resolution and make sure the upper house is informed and hopefully will be in agreement with the said resolution.
Still at the lower chamber, a demolition job appears to be aimed at former House Speaker and Leyte 1st District Representative Martin Romualdez. That's ahead of his scheduled appearance before the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, or ICI. This is according to House Deputy Speaker Ronnie Puno after Romualdez was linked to the Farm-to-Market Road controversy. Romualdez has largely stayed out of the spotlight since resigning as Speaker last September 17. But a week later, he was linked to alleged kickbacks in the flood control projects under ICI investigation. And while the farm-to-market road issue in Leyte involving claims of overpriced projects is a separate matter, Puno claims the timing of the media reports seems orchestrated to unfairly pin blame on Romualdez.
Parang may konting demolition na nangyayari dito, no? Parang gustong I think there is scapegoating that is going on, no? Nagtuturuan. Ang sa akin lang, follow the money. Di ba? There's all of these distractions that are being created, and I'm sensing a lynch mob mentality trying to pin the speaker alone, no, to all of the things that have happened, which is terribly unfair, no?
And still at the House, Cavite 4th District Representative Kiko Barzaga showed up late to his House ethics hearing on Monday, admitting he stayed up late playing computer games the night before. Barzaga is facing allegations of violating the Code of Conduct for public officials over controversial social media posts. Over the weekend, he also called for and joined a rally outside Forbes Park Village. That protest called for President Marcos's resignation.
My hearing was already over by the time I arrived.
Why were you late?
We were very busy last night.
About, sorry.
No, I was just playing games on my computer. Meow.
It appears the two lawmakers, Puno and Barzaga, show no interest in reconciliation, pushing for a full inquiry into Barzaga's alleged misconduct. This comes after the House Ethics Committee had convened a sub-panel to try to settle the National Unity Party's complaint against him for bringing disrepute to the chamber. It was Puno's NUP that filed the ethics complaint against Barzaga.
There is no reconciliation because this is not a personal grievance. Ang insulto is to the institution.
I prefer not to settle because I want to try to have a hearing kasi mas maganda talaga if we can all air our grievances out and to talk about it.
And over at the palace, Malacanang says President Marcos will not halt planned protests but reminded demonstrators to follow the law.
Kung hindi po ito naaayon sa batas at kayo pa'y lumalabag na, dapat po siguro kayong kasuhan. Pero ngayon, muli sasabihin natin, ang Pangulo ay abala sa pagtatrabaho. At kung ano man po ang pamumulitikang ginagawa ng iba, hindi po yan pinapansin sa ngayon ng Pangulo.
Now let's discuss all these issues at the House of Representatives, and joining us tonight is Kabataan Party List Congresswoman Rene Co. Good evening and welcome to the show, Congresswoman.
Good evening. Good evening, Ses and Pauline. Thank you very much for inviting us here. It's been an eventful day and sana ay ma-unpack natin lahat ng mga nangyari.
Okay, unahin na natin yung budget. Di ba nangako na sila na walang unprogrammed funds? Bakit nakakalusot pa rin ito? Nangako na ang House leadership. Diyan.
Actually, no, sa atin, dismayado tayo sa desisyon na tuloy-tuloy yung pagkakaroon ng unprogrammed appropriations. Matagal na ang ating kritisismo dito sa Makabayan Block, no, na meron pa ring unprogrammed appropriations. In fact, finlag natin yung sudden rise in billions, no, ng pag-park dyan ng mga proyekto na supposedly dapat ay nasa line items sila. For example, nakita natin na malaki yung paglipat ng pondo na nakalaan sa PhilHealth, no, para bigay way sa mga proyektong nakalaan sa unprogrammed appropriations. No, these are just some of the irregularities that we've noticed sa budget proceedings ng term ni President Marcos Jr. No, and that's why malakas yung clamor this year, no, na aside from flood control projects, ghost or substandard, which are, you know, line items, no, meron talaga dyan 4,000, no, ay nasa unprogrammed appropriations. And ang nalaman po ni Representative Tino of ACT Teachers Party List, no, ay in budgets 2023-2024, kung gusto nating gumamit ng unprogrammed appropriations, which are lump sum funds, kailangan merong special budget request that has to be approved by the President para ma-disburse po ito. So, nakakadismaya na meron pa ring unprogrammed appropriations kasi nakikita natin itong inaabuso, no? At because hindi itemized yung projects under this, no, ay madaling abusuhin para maging source of corruption na hindi na-check ng as transparently or as comprehensively in a normal budget season kasi wala siyang line item at nakakalagpas sa mga scrutiny ng congresspeople or even the civil society organizations.
So for you, Congresswoman, there are not enough safeguards pagdating sa unprogrammed funds kasi on the flip side, ang argument ng House leadership, kailangan yan para sa mga disasters.
Well, actually, flipping the argument again, no, yung Section 35 of Book 5 ng Administrative Code, which provides that a special budget request has to be approved by the President bago mag-disburse ng lump sum funds, which includes unprogrammed appropriations. That's supposed to be the safeguard. What did we observe, no? Na this safeguard did not do its function, no? Either one, the President is not aware na sa DBM lang daw nagsa-stop lahat ng approval ng unprogrammed appropriations, or no, nakuha yung approval ng President and ganito karaming proyekto yung nagagamit sa unprogrammed appropriations. Meaning po, no, sa usaping safeguard, hindi po enough na meron, kasi meron pero hindi naman po nag-function para protektahan na gamitin ito para ma-stop yung abuse.
So
I would agree sa mga ibang sinasabi ng congresspeople na, you know, lahat ng mga nandyan sa unprogrammed appropriations, ilagay sa normal, regular line items, sa programmed appropriations. Whether it be disaster funds, no? Meron tayong sitting, no, People's Climate Fund na pwedeng gamitin or yung Calamity Fund na pwedeng gamitin para ito yung i-disburse kung may disasters. Nandyan yan, hindi kailangan ng programmed appropriations.
So, you're laying the blame at the doorstep of Malacanang.
Yes po, firmly. Actually, I'm not just taking this from air, no. Ito ay nasa special provisions ng General Appropriations Act for 2023 and 2024. And ng 2025, tinanggal na po yung reference to that particular provision of the executive order. Kasi nung tinanong natin kung bakit, no, ang sagot sa atin ng DBM ay hindi po consistent yung provision sa practice. So, for us, baliktad. Dapat yung practice, gawin mong consistent with the law, with the provision. And hindi yung law yung mag-a-adjust sa practice.
Congresswoman Renee, let's talk about the budget itself. Education particularly got the highest in history at 1.28 trillion pesos. And supposedly, masaya dapat tayo, di ba? Because education under the Constitution needs to have the largest budget. But you pointed out that the allocation when it comes to per student will just boil down to around 100 pesos per day. So saan ba talaga napupunta yung funds ng education, Congresswoman? Because on the other hand, pagdating sa police and military, they're actually getting much higher at 2,500 and 4,600 respectively. So what message does that send about the priorities of the government when it comes to next year's budget?
Ang message na pinapakita nito ay hindi piniprioritize ang government ang kinabukasan. Hindi lang ng kabataan, pero ng mamamayang Pilipino. This is the loud and clear message we received noong inuungkat natin yung bilyones in corruption, di ba? Can you imagine itong bilyones na supposedly nasa batayang serbisyong panlipunan, nasa kung anong projects, programs for health, for education, etc. That doesn't, hindi doon pumupunta. Pupunta diretso sa pockets ng iilan at ngayon nagtuturoan kung sino ba talaga ang responsible. So, nandiyan na yung standing message na yan. Tapos, if itatagpi mo pa siya sa developments ng budget, no, baka nakakadismaya. Kasi if you look just a little bit deeper doon sa surface message, which is andyan nga yung sinasabi na, oh, we achieved for the first time ever the 4% education budget.
For GDP, as a percentage of GDP.
Diba? Na pinakamalaking budget ng education ever. Pero tama, doon sa na-compare natin na datos, kung compare mo yung budget ng Department of Education and yung pagsasama na budget ng CHED and SUCs sa students ng Philippines, no, for elementary and high school, that's just allotting 90 pesos and 50 centavos per student. And sa tertiary level, 100 pesos per student. So sa amin, no, clearly, even though sinasabi nilang pinakamalaki tong budget, kulang pa. And no, sa amin, in light of the 255 billion pesos na tinanggal in flood control projects, and yung na-point out nga na despite natanggal yung flood control, meron pa rin existing patronage politics means in other infrastructure projects, roads, bridges. No? Doon pa rin binubuhos yung pera, unacceptable na may kulang pa rin na education budget. Like the 6.7 billion na budget cut ng 25 state universities and colleges. Up until now, yung malaki-laking deficit na 140,000 classrooms na dito sana pinupunta yung budget at hindi yung continuing patronage politics, continuing ayuda, continuing pork na even though unconstitutional, no, it's still here, just hidden.
So yung imahe ng Kamara dahil sa flood control scandal, ano ba ang kinakailangan para ma-restore ang faith ng publiko? Sana tinanggal na nga talaga yung unprogrammed funds, di ba? Yun sana would send a message. Ano pa bang pwedeng gawin?
Well, una yun, no, tinanggal yung unprogrammed appropriations, pero ang pinaka-general talaga dito is makinig sa hinaing ng taong bayan. Aside po doon sa education na kulang and yung pag-shift ng pinakamalaking allotment pa rin ng budget, no, to defense, no, to state forces, no, and even yung na-criticize na palaki and unsustainable na military and uniformed personnel pension, 200 billion, by the way. And if you compare it to yung social pension for indigent senior citizens, mga lolo-lola na mahirap, na hindi mahanapan ng space na maglaan ng 13.9 billion para itong 1 million waitlist ay matanggal na. So, sa amin, maraming kailangan ilaan sa batayang serbisyong panlipunan na hindi ginagawa. So, yun, focus on pension, focus on health, focus on yung health na hindi enough po yung zero balance billing, gusto natin pati yung outpatient services ilibre siya para totoong universal yung healthcare system. Yung transportation na hindi naman ini-investan yung ating mga jeepneys and public transportation systems para lumago. Pero ang framework na yun is mag-import, kailangan wag na ganon. Ang dami pa pong kailangang bigyang atensyon na hindi po unfortunately ginawa this Congress. Patuloy pa rin ang ganitong klaseng sistema. Wala pong pagbabago. Kaya maaasahan po natin, Miss Pauline, na despite na may pagpalit ng mukha, wala pang pagpalit sistema. Maaasahan natin na may corruption pa rin. And so, para talagang ma-own up ng kabataan yung future nila, para mabigyang sufficient attention, hindi lang budget, yung kinabukasan nating lahat, kailangan magbago yung sistema.
Well, on a different topic, Congresswoman, sabi niya nga, no, it was an eventful day, also an eventful weekend. Can we just get your reaction to your colleague, Congressman Kiko Barzaga's call to storm Forbes Park and launch this massive rally?
Yeah, I was aware that there was a mobilization last night, no? And Congressman Kiko Barzaga was in attendance. Well, sa bahagi naman ng Makabayan Block, hindi naman bago ang mga kongresista na pumupunta sa mobilizations. In fact, this is something na gusto nating i-encourage pa dahil to be one with the people and being one with their calls, not selectively but all of our calls, no, ay sinyales na tuloy-tuloy yung pag-platform ng campaigns of the people instead of the few. Iniimbitahan natin syempre lahat ng kongresista na sa mga ibang mobilizations na mag-proceed. For example, sa October 17, may all-youth protest, National Day of Action. After ng series of walkouts against corruption, and August 21, meron din pong mobilization ang peasants, ang farmers, bilang Peasant Month po today, laban sa mababang presyo ng bigas at laging binabaha yung kanilang fields, nawawasak ang crops. Congressman Kiko Barzaga and other congresspeople are invited na dito natin ilagay ang ating efforts kasama ng mga sectors, kasama ng taong bayan.
But Congressman, do you support the way Congressman Barzaga is doing this call to action? Ang Kabataan Party List po ba willing na suportahan siya at sumali sa kanyang mobilization?
Well, he is free to hold the mobilizations and express himself, not only as a congressperson, pero as a Filipino. And actually, ito nga yung gusto nating protektahan with, diba, what we passed, we filed a bill, the new Public Assembly Act. Sa bahagi ng Kabataan Party List, ang foot namin ay nasa yung schools lumalabas. Kailangang suportahan yung paglaki ng build-up ng schools sa kung saan syempre mas mararamdaman ng kapwa kabataan yung kanilang init at dami, which is U-Belt, which is areas near them. And so, mas doon po ang focus ng Kabataan Party List.
Hindi sa exclusive village. Okay,
Mas doon po talaga.
We thank you for joining us in the big story. Kabataan Party List Representative Reneco. Meantime, Malacanang has sounded the alarm over Davao City Congressman Paulo Duterte's threat that he will make those behind the arrest of his father pay. The lawmaker made this alleged threat after the International Criminal Court declined former President Rodrigo Duterte's request for interim release. Palace spokesperson Claire Castro said Malacanang had nothing to do with the ICI's decision and then had this reminder to Congressman Pulong.
Hindi po dapat tayo mabuhay sa mga pagbabanta. Tayo po ay nasa sinasabing civilized society at wala po tayo sa isang barbaric world. So dapat po tayong tumugon kung ano po ang rule of law at hindi po tayo dapat natatakot o lagi na lamang nabubuhay sa pananakot.
All right, I was referring to the ICC, not ICI. Meantime, Undersecretary Castro also reacted to Vice President Sara Duterte's pronouncement that she will not pick Boying Remulla as ombudsman if she were president. Castro assured President Marcos knows what he is doing and Ombudsman Remulla does too.
Nagkataon po hindi siya po ang presidente, so mahirap pong sagutin ang isang pangarap na hindi mangyayari sa ngayon. Pero ang alam po natin, the president thinks well, knows better. At alam po din natin na ang Pangulo ang nagpaumpisa para po labanan ang korupsyon. At hindi po niya hahayaan na matolerate o kampihan o depensahan yung gumagawa ng pagnanakaw ng pondo ng bayan.
Meantime, the Presidential Communications Office has announced that former broadcaster Mon Ilagan has been appointed PCO Undersecretary. Ilagan will handle operations while Yusek Claire Castro will remain as Palace Press Officer and spokesperson.
All right, we're just going to pause for another breather, but after that, it's the season of surveys again, and two of the country's top pollsters share their findings about corruption, inflation, and former President Rodrigo Duterte. The big story will be right back. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the big story. A new Pulse Asia survey shows inflation and corruption remain the top urgent concerns among Filipinos. 54% of respondents cited inflation as their main concern, while 51% pointed to corruption. Other issues identified were higher wages, criminality, poverty, illegal drugs, and job creation. The survey was conducted from September 27 to 30 amid congressional probes into alleged budget insertions and ghost projects. Meanwhile, a social weather station survey finds that half of respondents believe former President Rodrigo Duterte should be held accountable for deaths linked to his drug war. That's nearly identical to the 51% recorded in the same survey in February, weeks before he faced an ICC arrest warrant and was taken into custody. The third quarter SWS survey was conducted among 1,500 adults from September 24 to 30, just before the ICC rejected Duterte's request for interim release. The former president has since been informed of the decision. For his part, Strat-based President Dindo Manhit said public opinion could increase as the ICC proceedings progress. He was also asked whether the ICC's rejection of Duterte's interim release might influence public sympathy.
Lalakas pa yan pag nagpatuloy yung case sa ICC, lumabas ang mga ebidensya, makita natin magsalita ani ang mga witnesses or mga affected individuals or families sa isyong ito. Ang sympathy is driven by the information that the public gets. So ito ay laban ng information na nanggagaling sa mga nagkaso, ano ba yung mga ebidensya na ilalatag sa ICC, at saka information na patuloy na sinishare na illegal ang pag-arrest. Ako naniniwala ako na may consistency that palaging pag may negative news tungkol sa mga Duterte, pumapalo ang kanilang social media warriors.
And we now move on to other headlines today. Over the weekend, 7 foreign missions in the Philippines condemned China's latest actions in the West Philippine Sea. That's after Chinese Coast Guard and militia vessels reportedly rammed and fired water cannons at Philippine ships near Pag-asa Island. The US, the UK, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and Finland, and the EU urged China to stop its dangerous tactics. The Philippine Coast Guard reported minor damage but no injuries. The National Maritime Council condemned the actions, and the Foreign Affairs Department will file a diplomatic protest. Also over the weekend, the Education Department suspended face-to-face classes in Metro Manila today and tomorrow. That's after a rise in influenza-like illnesses among students and staff. The Health Department, however, noted cases are lower than last year's, with over 121,000 reported so far. It stressed preventive measures remain a sound precaution as flu season begins.
And in other news, Malacanang confirmed that a bill providing free funeral services for indigent Filipinos has lapsed into law. Republic Act 12309, which became law on September 28 without President Marcos's signature, allows the government to cover funeral costs for families in crisis or classified as indigent. Accredited funeral homes will provide a standard package including transport, casket or urn, and embalming, with the DSWD reimbursing the providers. The agency has 60 days to issue implementing rules. Meanwhile, Taal Volcano in Batangas recorded a minor phreatic or steam-driven eruption Monday morning, producing a 900-meter-high plume. PHIVOLCS says the event is unlikely to escalate into a magmatic eruption, although 21 volcanic quakes were recorded in the past 24 hours. Bulusan Volcano in Sorsogon also shows increased shallow seismic activity, raising the risk of sudden phreatic eruptions. PHIVOLCS maintains alert level 1 for the area, advising caution. And before we go, we'd like to thank the Catholic Mass Media Awards for recognizing Kapatid shows. Last October 10, the CMMA released a complete list of finalists for its 47th season, which winners will be announced next month. Our gratitude to the CMMA for including The Big Story as finalist for Best News Program for the television category. The Big Story, of course, is a flagship and homegrown program of One News under Signal TV. Our co-finalists include sister shows of TV5, like Frontline Tonight and Frontline Pilipinas. Also finalists for television are Ted Filon, DJ Chacha sa True FM, and Julius and Tintin para sa Pamilyang Pilipino on 1PH for Best News Magazine Program. Julius and Tintin is also nominated for Best Talk Show, while the TV5 station ID 2024 called Hatid Saya Ang Paskong Kapatid is a finalist for CMMA's 47th Best Station ID. And for radio, making it as finalists are Heart to Heart for Best Counseling Program, Sana Lured for Best Drama Program, and Good Morning Bayan and Balita Pilipinas are both in the shortlist for Best News Radio Program. All right, so
Wow,
once
that's a
again,
long list.
thank you very much to CMMA for recognizing
you.
us. Of course, One News, 1PH, True FM, and TV5 are all part of the Kapatid Network. So thank you for this recognition.
Yeah. Congratulations too to all the other kapatids.
Kapatid, ayan. Okay, and that will do it for us this Monday evening, rather. Thank you so much for watching The Big Story.
Did you say morning?
Monday morning. Evening na pala.
We'll be back here tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. as usual, kapatid. We are all One News, all sides, all the time. Have a good night.
Okay, coming up next, play-by-play with Andre Felix and Cheska Liton-Calao. Happy
Nabanggit mo
Monday.
morning. Nakalimutan mo, good morning kapatid. Nominated din
Oo
kami.
nga eh. I was thinking about it kasi
Ayun!
Morning kapatid is also
Nominated din kami,
nominated.
Kaya na pag
Sa
good
magazine.
morning.
Siyempre.
Pero congratulations.
Yes, congratulations
Big
to Big Story and
Sa
all
lahat.
the kapatid shows,
Oh.
even sa radio.
TV5,
Yung mga na-nominate,
1PH, lahat, One News. Congratulations to all the shows nominated in the Catholic Mass Media Awards. Good luck, ha? Pero ngayon pa lang panalo na kayo, tingin ko. Thank you. We'll pick it up from here. Thank you to Cez and to Pauline. Ladies of the Big Story, great show as always on our show. To kick off the work week, we've got updates from today's games in the PBL Reinforced Conference, including PLDT's opener against a very promising Capital One squad, plus the aftermath of a couple of Sunday upsets in a PBA Philippine Cup.
And we've got some injury updates in UAAP basketball after yet another full weekend of games.
You're rooting for the De La Salle Green Archers. Ouch. I'm Andre Felix.
And I'm Cheska Liton-Calao.
And here's tonight's play-by-play.
Ramiro, the show by Mamoy leads. Future moves puts it on. Unbelievable. Gemma on the left side. Bakunas rejecting Estevo for the
We kick things off with the PLDT high-speed hitters picking up